All right, so a lot to unpack there. The question is simply that does he believe there's a relationship that exists in the terms of attorney-client privilege between him and Ms. Willis? Is that accurate,
Yes,
Ms.
Judge,
Merchant?
it was. I asked if he believed his relationship with Ms. Willis is subject to attorney-client privilege.
Okay, I don't see why a yes or no would be barred.
Maybe I'm not understanding the question. If the question is, does Mr. Wade and District Attorney Willis have an attorney-client relationship?
It is not.
There's no foundation for that. If the question to the witness is, does his relationship with District Attorney Willis impact his attorney-client relationship with his divorce attorneys, that I don't think is an appropriate question for that witness. First, first I believe is a proper phrasing. The second, I think there's been a representation that Mr. Wade preserves and doesn't waive anything, and so I think asking him particular questions in order to potentially backdoor a waiver is inappropriate, and that's my question.
All right, if we're just trying to, again, assess where a privilege does or does not exist, and we're not actually getting into it, I think we can establish those, parameters. But Ms. Merchant, can you rephrase the question based on that concern, and we'll see where we are?
Yes. Do you believe, that your relationship with Ms. Willis is subject to an attorney-client privilege? Not if you and Ms. Willis have one, but do you believe that that relationship is subject to one?
I'm going to object to that question as it's phrased. In what context? Any conversation with his attorneys is privileged. That I think is clear. What's not clear to me from that question is Ms. Merchant asking in the context of your communication with your attorneys? Is that or outside that context? Is it?
Right. And Ms. Merchant, I think we need to figure out what are we getting at with this. I'm
just trying to figure out if he thought that their relationship is subject to an attorney-client privilege. I mean, it's been asserted. I think it's going to be asserted, and that was all I was asking.
The actions themselves wouldn't be an issue. It's more communications.
Someone saw them. Someone had knowledge of it. Is that attorney-client privilege?
All right. Well, I guess I would find his legal opinion on this isn't relevant. Okay. We can deal with that as it comes up. So, sustained.
In 2022, in this affidavit, you swore that you and Willis developed a personal relationship.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said that didn't develop until 2022, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's different from what you said in your pleading in May 2023 in the divorce case, correct?
No, ma'am.
In May 2023, when you were asked if you had if you'd had any affairs, essentially, and you said none.
That's correct.
Okay. So in May, you said you had not, in May 2023 in the divorce case, you said you had not had a personal relationship, an affair, a romantic relationship with anyone.
That's correct.
But you told this court in the affidavit that you did have one that started in 2022. So that would have been ongoing at 2023.
So here I think there's a distinction, if you'd allow me to explain.
Please.
The interrogatory asked the question during the course of your marriage.
Or to date. It actually says,
I'm going to request that the witness be permitted to answer.
Mr. Wade.
So my marriage was irretrievably broken in 2015, ma'am, by agreement. My wife and I agreed that once she had the affair in 2015 that we'd get a divorce. We didn't get a divorce immediately because my children were still in school and I refused to allow them to grow up without their father at the time. So we waited. We waited until the youngest graduated and we dropped her off at college and then filed for the divorce. So if you're asking me about the interrogatory as it relates to having the 2022 relationship with District Attorney Willis, I want to say because marriage was irretrievably broken, I was free to have a relationship.
So the question, though, was if you had a relationship. And in 2023, you said you did not. And that's different than what you said in this affidavit, correct?
No, ma'am. I said during the course of my marriage. So
you believe that you...
Let me finish, Ms. Merchant.
So in 2015, my marriage was irretrievably broken. So I did not have a relationship with anyone during the course of my marriage.
And in interrogatory asked you if you had any receipts for travel with someone of the other sex up until the time you were answering it. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that you didn't. You've already testified to that earlier. But in this affidavit, you said you swore that you had travel expenses and shared expenses on travel with Ms. Willis.
Again, during the course of my marriage, I had no relationship or receipts.
I'm not asking about during the course of your marriage.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask the witness to be allowed to answer the question.
Continue. I have no problem with him answering.
As it relates to receipts today, I don't have any receipts, ma'am.
So you don't have any travel receipts available to you for any travel that you did with Ms. Willis?
I don't have any receipts, no, ma'am.
No receipts that, so you used your business credit card for these trips, correct?
I use my business credit card for everything.
Okay, yes. You used it for your kids' tuition.
Yes, ma'am.
You used it for personal travel with Ms. Willis.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have receipts from those business credit cards that you have to file with your taxes, correct?
No, ma'am.
No.
I filed a statement. I turn over the statement, and whatever's there on the statement, the accountant looks at it, and the accountant says, okay, this is personal, goes over here, this is business, goes over here, here are your taxes.
So you have those statements. We'll call them statements instead of receipts. You have those statements, correct?
I have the statement, yes, ma'am.
Okay. But when you answered the interrogatory under oath, you said you did not have anything to show the records of travel with Ms. Willis.
I answered the question. I had no receipts, ma'am.
You had no receipts, but you had statements.
I ordered the statement, yes, ma'am.
You did order the statement.
I did.
Okay. And so we're just talking to semantics between invoice and statements, or receipt, I'm sorry.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, to the argumentative tone of the question. I believe it's been asked and answered several times.
All right, sustain.
Let's see. You also in this affidavit said that no funds paid to you for compensation as your role as special counsel was shared with Willis, correct?
That's correct.
And that you never cohabitated with Willis, correct?
That's correct.
By cohabitation, does that mean that you never spent the night with Willis?
I spent the night with her during travel.
Okay. And so I just want to qualify your use of the term cohabitation. That means you didn't live together,
That's correct.
but you did spend the night together.
Yes.
When was the first time you spent the night together?
Your Honor,
That's the subject of his affidavit, Judge.
Right, but it might not be the subject of this hearing. So the question is the nature and extent of the relationship. And so if they just spent the night on occasion, I don't think we're going to document in detail every single time that happened.
And I don't intend to do that, Judge, but I think what is relevant is when the relationship started. And that's what you had indicated on.
Well, why don't we start with that
I
question
don't
and go
have
from
an objection
there?
to that question.
And that's what I asked, when the first time he spent the night with her was. That's what I asked.
That's a different question, isn't it?
Okay, so let's not talk about when you spent the night. When did your romantic relationship with Miss Willis begin?
2022.
When in 2022?
Early 2022.
So you were appointed in November of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
And your relationship started early. What's early? January? February?
Around March.
Around March. But you two met at an October 2019 judicial conference, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And describe your relationship at that point then.
Which point?
2019.
So I was at a judicial conference to teach a course, if you will, to newer judges. I did that in 2019. As I was exiting the conference, another judge was standing outside who was a friend of mine. I stopped and exchanged pleasantries with her. And standing, talking to her at the time was then Judge Willis. She introduced us at that time to my vehicle and left the conference. So that meeting was didn't talk to her again probably maybe a month or a month and a half had gone by.
Okay, so you talked to her November, maybe?
Maybe.
On the phone?
On the phone.
Okay. How regularly did you speak with her in 2021 on the phone?
In 2021?
I'm sorry, 2019. I'm so sorry. 2019. How frequently did you speak with her on the phone?
2019, after the meeting, I probably talked to her 2 or 3 times. She would have questions. I was the district rep for the particular district that I sat in.
Okay.
And the judges would, when they would have questions, they sometimes would go to the rep. So she was outside of my district, but she would call me. She felt comfortable calling me to ask me the questions. I don't know if you know the racial makeup of certain benches, but it wasn't very diverse. So she felt comfortable calling me for advice. And she did that. And we had also in common that she was starting a private law practice at the time. I'd already had mine up and going, and we talked about balancing the demands of the bench with their private practice. So we didn't talk that often, but when she had questions, mostly legal issues that would come up, she would call me.
I just want to make sure, because my question was just how many times, and you said 2 to 3 times, right? Okay. And in 2022, how frequently did you speak in 2022? This is before you were appointed.
I'm sorry, perhaps Ms. March's timeline, 2022?
I'm sorry, 2020. 2020. How frequently did you speak in 2020?
2020, it was more frequent than 19, obviously, but
More frequent. Can you tell me approximately a month how often you think you spoke with her on the phone?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the granular detail. I think Mr. Wade can certainly answer however he wants to, but if we're going to go through every time we spoke on the phone as opposed to generally characterizing a relationship, it would more detail than is necessary.
Judge, I'm not going to go through every time they spoke on the phone. I'm asking for generally how frequently they spoke.
I think at that level, that's fine.
Thank you. About how frequently did you speak in 2020?
per month.
I mean, if it was 2 or 3 times that entire year, you can tell me that. If it was more than that, then you can quantify it by month.
No. We spoke on the telephone often. I mean, I don't know how many. I couldn't give you a amount of time because remember, COVID happened and the world was shut down. But so we spoke on the phone more than 2019, definitely.
Okay, let's qualify it. Before her election in 2020, how frequently did you speak?
You mean as she's campaigning?
Before the election. Yes, as she was campaigning, before she was elected.
It's two different animals.
As she was campaigning, before she was elected.
Okay, so during the course of her campaign, we didn't talk as much, obviously, because she was busy. Fulton County is a large jurisdiction to cover. So we didn't talk a whole lot, but she did know that I'd gone through the election process. So when things come up that she had questions about, she would call me and ask me.
And just to be fair, I'm only... Judge, actually, he's not answered. And I mean, I don't mind him explaining, but I just wanted to know how many times. I mean, if we talk about every conversation they talked about, I
You gotta let him finish his sentence, and then if you need to redirect him or have me direct him, I can. Mr. Wade, you can continue.
Yes, sir. So sometimes it would be like a 3-second call. She would go, during your election, have you ever seen this? And I would say, no, but here's what we do. And we'd hang up. She had a lot of professionals working for her, but she trusted my judgment, so she called me. It'd be brief conversations, but she called.
So my question was, how frequently did you speak with her prior to her election? Frequently? Infrequently?
More than 2019, but it wasn't a everyday thing, no.
In 2021, before you were appointed in November, so January to November 2021, the only time I'm talking about, how frequently did you speak with Ms. Willis on the phone?
In 2021, then it became frequent.
Frequent.
Yes,
But you did not work at the DA's office at that point, correct?
I did not.
So the affidavit that you submitted, you showed on it, you submitted one record that showed that Ms. Willis had paid a couple $100s for one flight, correct?
Say it again?
The affidavit that you submitted to this court showed that Ms. Willis had paid for one flight several $100s. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. I think that. Are you drawing a distinction for her paying for a flight or for her actually booking a flight? Because those are two separate things.
I will re-ask it. The affidavit you filed in this court, you alleged that Ms. Willis paid for one flight. Paid for one flight, correct?
No, ma'am.
You did not allege she paid for one flight.
No, ma'am. What I allege is that our travel was split roughly evenly. So where you see I have booked the flight with my credit card, what you don't see that she covered her own reimbursement to me. The flights that you see here are the flights that she would have booked with her own resources, with her own car.
And there's one flight, correct?
One flight reflecting that she
Submitted
actually
one
Ms.
flight.
Merchant, let him finish and then you can redirect him.
one flight that she actually booked, yes. The other flights I booked, she paid for.
So the affidavit, you submitted one flight that she booked and paid for.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the phrasing of that question. The line in the affidavit is not as Ms. Merchant representing it. It said examples of the district attorney plane tickets for she and I with her personal funds were attached to the exhibit. It certainly did not represent the only example of the district attorney purchasing flights for Mr. Wade or for compensating other travel.
All right, understand this, Cross. I think that's something you can, it's now on the record, but also something you can take on cross.
Thank you.
And just so everybody is clear, all I asked you is, your affidavit, you submitted proof of one flight that she paid for and booked. That's all I'm asking. Correct?
With the explanation, yes, ma'am.
It's all I needed. You said in the affidavit that you roughly shared travel, though, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this roughly sharing travel, you're saying she reimbursed you.
She did.
And where did you deposit the money she reimbursed you?
I was cash. She didn't give me any checks.
So she paid you cash for her share of all these vacations.
Mr. Schaefer, you'll step out if you do that again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so all of the vacations that she took, she paid you cash.
Yes, ma'am.
And you purchased all the vacations on your business credit card, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you included those in deductions on your taxes, correct?
No, ma'am.
No, you did not.
No, ma'am.
Okay. We'll get to that in just a minute then. Let's see. So the only thing that you have actual documentary proof, not cash, is this one receipt that you attached to the affidavit. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I object to that question. That is a mischaracterization of the assertion that is in the affidavit.
I'm
So
asking,
then he can deny it. I think you can confirm Ms. Merchant.
is this the only written proof that you have of a trip she paid for?
That I have?
Yes. Okay. So you submitted the one piece of written evidence that you have that she paid for something. Everything else is in cash. Is that accurate?
No.
That's not accurate. Okay. Please tell me, what other receipts do you have then that show that she paid for things?
I don't have them.
Okay. Okay. So this is the only receipt that you have to show that she paid for travel.
That I have. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. In your divorce case, you filed a domestic relations financial affidavit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The first one you filed was in January 2022, right?
Thereabout. Yes, ma'am.
And those are under oath?
Yes.
Okay. And you also filed for taxes in 2022, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me about your business. Do you have a ship, or are you a solo practitioner?
As it stands today,
Yes.
so today, I have a separate PC. My law partner has his own separate PC.
Okay.
So we're the same umbrella, under the same roof. So we share expenses, we share income, and we split it.
So are you a partnership?
We are a partnership since of we share expenses, we share income.
Are you registered with the state of Georgia as a partnership?
So the WBC firm that included myself, Terrence Bradley, and Christopher Campbell, we were registered in the Secretary of State as a partnership
Right.
for a short period of time.
And that was dissolved, then, right, in 2023?
I'm going to object to the witness answer his question.
Mr. Wade, do you have something else to add there?
I did. When things happened and we excused Mr. Bradley from that partnership, it left Christopher Campbell and myself. So now you have two separate PCs under the same umbrella, sharing expenses and income.
Okay. So let me just narrow down my questions then. Are you registered? And have you been registered at any time in the state of Georgia as Wade and Campbell?
Wade, no ma'am.
You've never been registered as a partnership?
As Wade and Campbell, no
Wade
ma'am.
and Campbell, yes, thank you.
But as Wade Bradley Campbell, yes ma'am.
Wade Bradley Campbell was registered on April 1st, 2021, and administratively dissolved on December 8th, 2023, correct?
Yes ma'am.
Okay. Other than that partnership, you have always been registered as law office of Nathan Wade,
Yes ma'am.
not with Chris Campbell.
Correct.
Thank you. So the affidavit that you filed in your divorce case, the first one in 22, I think I'm up to number 7. I'm going to just show you, give you a group of exhibits so we don't have to go back and forth. I'm marking the 2022 as 7. I'm marking the 2024 as 8. I'm marking the credit card statements as 9, and your taxes as 10.
I object to the taxes because of the relevance of them at this point. The entire business structure doesn't seem clear to me as either impeaching or relevant to the issues that the court's under the court's consideration. But insofar as we're talking about tax returns and other things like that, certainly that's should be redacted, and I would object to the relevance of it.
I agree they should be redacted. I don't agree to the relevance, but I haven't tendered yet, Judge. I'm just marking them right now so that everyone can follow.
The eventual relevance that you were getting at here.
Well, I'm going to ask him because one of the things shown in this case is a personal and financial interest. So, and he's talked about how he was reimbursed for these things, and so I have a right to go into the veracity of those statements. So let's see, 7, 8, sorry, 9. And then 10. Right now, I'm just going to show you what I've marked. That's
Can I see what you're showing?
oh yeah, of course. They're all from the USB drive I gave you.
I don't want to hold you up to a copy.
No, it's other than the drive I gave you. I'm just. Can I approach Judge? I'm just showing you what I marked as 7, 8, 9, and 10. Just so you have them for your records as I ask you some questions.
All right.
So, so these are sworn. I'm first going to ask you about the domestic relations financial affidavit. These are sworn. They're filed under oath, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the most recent one that you filed was filed on January 26, 2024.
Yes, ma'am.
So a few weeks ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that one, you said that you made $9,500 each month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that in 2022, in this case alone, isn't it true you were paid $303,000, over $303,000?
I was paid?
Yes, in this case. Fulton County, by Fulton County.
I see where you're going. So,
And Judge, I just asked him to answer the question. If he wants to explain it, I've got no problem with that.
Mr. Wade, just listen to the question asked and just answer the question asked.
In 2022, isn't it true you were paid over $300,000?
no, ma'am, that is not true.
You were not paid over $300,000 by Fulton County.
No, ma'am, I was not.
Okay. How much were you paid in 2022 then?
So, what I was beginning to explain was Fulton County wrote a check to my firm.
Okay.
What happens at that point is the checks are then deposited, as you have the bank statements, you see that, and then they are dispersed between the three of us. So there was Mr. Bradley, there was Mr. Wade, and there was Christopher Campbell. A third. So when you ask me if I was paid $300,000, the answer is no. I got a third of that went to my personal firm. Now, once the money was distributed to my personal firm, obviously the expenses come out of that, and I get, at the end of the day, whatever the profit is. So I did not get $300,000. No, ma'am.
And let me just clarify. My question was not, did you put in your pocket $300,000? My question was the law firm of Nathan Wade paid over $300,000 in the year 2022?
Again, a third of that came to the law firm of Nathan Wade.
So you're saying that the law firm of Nathan Wade did not receive checks from Fulton County government over $300,000 in the year 2022?
That's a different question. A third of the $300,000 came to Nathan Wade.
Okay. Again, I'm not asking what went in your pocket. I'm asking, was the law firm of Nathan Wade paid over $300,000 in 2022?
I'm asking answer several times.
I know, but I think
Okay.
we're answering the point there. So, final time, Ms. Mershon.
That's fine. I can move on, Judge. Thank you. So you said that they were dispersed amongst all of you, or put into an account with all of you. So it's your testimony that for 2022, every check you received from Fulton County government went into an operating account with you, Bradley, and Campbell.
No. That's not what I testified to. So the Wade, Bradley, and Campbell firm established an account when we had to purchase a building in 2022. At that point, every income that came into the entity went into that account.
Okay.
And then after expenses were paid, it was split a third, right? Once that was dissolved, then the funds would go into a different account, my account, and then I would disperse funds between now Attorney Campbell and myself, half and one half.
Okay.
Make sense?
It does. Let me be more direct then. So the Synovus operating account that you had for Wade, Bradley, and Campbell,
Yes, ma'am.
the checks from Fulton County from January of 2022 until June 17th, 2022, those checks were deposited in that operating account.
Yes, ma'am.
Starting on July 15th, 2022, the checks you received from Fulton County up until May 26, 2022, all went into an escrow account that you had at Fifth Third Bank, correct?
No, not all of them.
Not all of them?
Some of them, yes.
So it's your testimony that some of your checks from July 15th, 2022 up until May 26th, 2023, some of them went into an account outside of Fifth Third Bank?
Your Honor, I'm going to check to the relevance of the financial transactions.
How much money you made is highly relevant in this case. It's the personal financial business and where the money is, and I mean, it's just a follow-up on things he's testified to.
And why is how much money he made relevant?
Because he represented it's very relevant. He filed an affidavit with the court saying, he told another judge that he made $9,500 a month. That's what he swore to. And
All right, so this entire inquiry is just to establish that prior and consistent statement.
yes.
All right. I'll give you a minute or two more to
Okay.
try that, but we're going to have to move on.
Thank you. So I know you're saying you only got a third of the $300,000, but you were paid over, the firm was paid over $300,000 in 2022, correct?
So, Ms. Merchant, it's not what I'm saying. They're numbers. They're there. It's the truth. The funds were paid. They were divvied between the three of us, going into an operating account. Expenses paid out of it.
Okay.
At the end of that, the 9,000 figure is what you have.
So that's where you got the 9,000 figure from.
Yes, ma'am.
And let's see, prior to when you filed for divorce in November 2021, you would use Mr. Bradley's credit card to pay for things with Ms. Willis, correct? And then pay him back in cash.
I've never used Mr. Bradley's credit card.
You've never used his credit card
Never.
for transactions to anything with Ms. Willis, out to dinner, anything like that. Hotels.
I've never used Mr. Bradley's credit card. I've never used anyone else's credit card. Not even my father's, and we have the same name.
And you'd pay back, if you ever did use someone's credit card, you'd pay back in cash, though, correct?
Ma'am, I've never used someone else's credit.
Can you take a look at the bank records that I gave you? It's the largest tab you have.
For the record, which exhibit is this?
It is exhibit, hold on, Judge. It's exhibit 9. It should be the largest section you've got.
Your Honor, three questions from the exhibits haven't been tendered, and I maintain my objection.
All right, let's see what the next question is, and maybe then that objection is going to be highly relevant. Okay.
Is that an accurate copy of your Capital One statements that you provided in discovery to, is that an accurate reflection of your Capital One records?
That I provided in discovery to whom?
To your divorce lawyers, or that you provided in the divorce proceeding?
Is the question, does he recognize it by sight?
I'm asking if it's his statements, his bank
I
statements.
think that is the question.
Well, I mean, it's a thick document, but I believe you if you say that this is my wife's divorce lawyer gave you. I believe it.
Your name's on every page, correct?
On every page?
Pretty much every page, if not every page.
No, it's not on every page. No, ma'am.
They're all Capital One bank records
They
showing. Okay? Just take your time, look through it. Tell me if there's anything that you think is not yours.
No, they appear to be.
Okay. And those bank records show that you paid for travel with Miss Willis.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm going to object the relevance of these documents and the.
Well, I think, are you tendering Exhibit 9?
I'm going to, Judge, and they're highly relevant to the whole
Well, he's
reason.
asked him a question about the contents of them, and they haven't been admitted yet, so why don't we start there?
Thanks. Those show travel that you and Miss Willis took.
Well, so you're asking about the contents of something that hasn't been admitted yet, right?
I'm asking him if that's what it shows because I know that they're going to object on relevance.
Well, first we got to see if it's you've authenticated it, perhaps. And before we get into other details of what's in it, I think
I can
it needs to be
tender them.
admitted.
That's fine. I move to admit them.
All right.
Object on relevance.
On relevant. All right. And on that, overruled. Ms. Merchant.
Thank you. Those records demonstrate that you paid for travel with yourself and Miss Willis, correct?
They should.
Okay. And let's just talk about that travel.
Okay.
The first trip is Belize in March 2023. Is that a trip that you took with Willis?
Are you asking?
Did you take a trip with Miss Willis in 2023 to Belize?
I did.
Did you take a trip to California with Miss Willis in 2023?
I did.
Did you pay for those trips on that credit card?
I used the credit card to book the travel, but understand.
She paid you back cash.
Well, let me say this. Let's take the Belize trip, for example, since
Okay.
you started there. That was a birthday gift to me, so I paid nothing for that trip. Zero.
Okay. So the charges that are on your card, she gave you cash for?
She did.
Okay. So all of the charges.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I believe the witness had finished answering the question.
Oh, did you have more?
I did.
Okay.
I wanted to get into the charges on the card because traveling with her is a task. You can probably imagine the attention that happens. So for safety reasons, she would limit her transactions. I mean, imagine trying to walk through an airport or sit at a restaurant or do anything. So there was no attempt to conceal. It's a credit card. Everything is here. So.
And that's not what I asked.
Okay.
What I asked was the charges for Belize in March 20 on that credit card. Those are things you purchased to go with Miss Willis to Belize.
Those are things that we booked with my card that she
Yes.
paid. Yes.
Yes. So those show up on your credit card.
They do.
And you're saying that she paid you cash to reimburse you for all of that.
She did.
And she paid cash for both of your portions or just hers?
Both.
Okay. So that trip, Belize, just Belize, she paid you for everything on Belize.
The entire trip.
Okay. So the food, tattoo parlor, all that stuff, she paid for.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
There was no tattoo parlor in Belize.
The charges, there's a tattoo parlor on the charges. I'm not getting into what it was for. I'm just asking if everything that's on that card related to Belize, she paid you back for.
She paid for it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's talk about California. In May 2023, you all went to California together.
Yes.
And you booked plane tickets.
Yes.
And her name was on those plane tickets.
They were.
And so I know you said that you were worried about security and things like that, but that was in her name. When she traveled, she had to use her name.
Oh, so the plane tickets, yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you paid for those plane tickets, and you paid for a hotel.
So, again, the card, yes.
You used your credit card, and I'm not asking about after what happened. I'm asking, did you use your credit card to book your flight and hotel to California?
I did.
And there's a lot of Ubers on there as well for California. Did you pay for those Ubers as well?
Yes.
Did
We
Ms.
were in
Willis,
Napa.
and you're saying that Miss Willis, are you saying that Miss Willis paid you back for that?
Yes.
Did she pay for the entire trip, or did she pay for her half of the trip?
The Napa trip, she paid for the excursions. So the expenses sort of balanced out. I mean, there was never, let me be clear, there was never a time when I would say, hey, I bought dinner. Dinner costs $25. You need to give me $25.
Okay.
If you spend any time with Miss Willis, you understand that she's very independent, proud
Judge,
woman.
I'd object. Come on.
So she's going to
Mr. Wade.
so she's going to insist that she carries her own weight, and it actually was a point of contention. Own weight.
So let me re-ask the question to make sure that you answer it. A California trip that you paid for, saying that she did not pay you back for cash. Instead, she paid for excursions, and you believe that was roughly half.
Now, she gave me some cash, yes.
She
But
gave you
what I'm
some.
saying is everything that we did when we got into Napa, she paid for.
The trip that she booked on her credit card in Miami, did you pay her cash back for your half of that?
No.
So you never paid
No.
her back for the ticket she bought for you?
No. I would say I did pay her back because there were times when I would pay for dinner.
Okay.
She would pay for dinner. It would balance out. But in a relationship, ma'am, you don't, particularly men, we don't go asking back for anything. So you're not keeping a ledger of things that you pay for versus the thing that she's paid for, which is why I said that it was a point of intention, because she was very emphatic and adamant about this independent, strong woman thing, so demanded that she pay her own way.
But she's the district attorney of Fulton County, and she has to file financial disclosures disclosing any gifts with anybody that she does business with in Fulton County, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. Let's talk about Tennessee. You booked a cabin in August 2023 and paid for a cabin in Tennessee. That's when you paid for it. I don't know when the trip was. Can you tell us about that?
August of 2023.
You booked a trip for $1,481.54.
Are you asking me, did I take that trip with Miss Willis, or are you asking me?
First, I was just asking you to acknowledge that that is correct from the records, that you
Oh.
paid for a cabin in Tennessee. Do you recall, and hopefully you can do it from your memory, do you recall paying for a cabin 6 months ago, $1,400.81 in Tennessee?
Where are we now? What page is that?
I'm just asking from your memory. Do you remember paying for a cabin?
Your Honor, if he's going to be asked about a particular transaction.
You can answer whether he remembers or not.
I don't.
Mr. Wade, I'm not asking you to go through 1,000 pages of records. I'm asking if you remember paying for a cabin 6 months ago in Tennessee. Do you remember booking a cabin?
I booked lots of cabins.
Did you go to a cabin, Willis, ever?
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 No.
Ever gone to a cabin with Miss Willis?
No.
Have you ever gone to Tennessee with Miss Willis?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
That was around 2022, early 2022.
Early 2022? Okay.
It was a day trip.
Okay, so you didn't spend the night?
So it was a day trip.
Okay.
We would drive there, have lunch, drive back. The reason we would do that is because the attention, she couldn't get any peace of mind going locally, so we'd get in my car and drive to someplace off the beat path and have lunch and drive back.
Is that when you went to Fani Goat with her? It's in Jasper, Georgia.
No, that's in Georgia. I don't recall going to Fani and Goat with her.
So the Tennessee day trips were only Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever do these day trips in Georgia?
Did we drive anywhere in Georgia?
Yeah, you were
Of course.
talking about day trips
we
going
drove.
out, and I'm talking about outside of the metro area. Day trips that you were just talking about. These trips you were talking about. The ones that you were, I'm only asking about the ones you were just talking about. Are all of those in Tennessee?
No, we drove to Alabama before.
Okay.
Back.
You drove to Alabama? Mm-hmm. Did you go anywhere in Georgia? North Georgia?
Yeah, I'm going to object. If she wants to direct his attention in some way to a time frame or a location, then I think it might be easier for the witness to accurately
Ms.
answer.
Marshall, I think if you don't have the specific details yourself, we need to start getting into specifics or more maybe broadly phrased questions. You can't just be exploring around indefinitely.
Is it fair to say that you've taken so many trips with her you don't even really remember all the places you've gone?
So many trips.
You're having trouble remembering going if you went to North Georgia or not.
Were you asking me about specific places? And I want to be candid in my responses, so I have to jog my memory because these are places that I frequented, but not with her. So I want to make certain that if there was ever a time that she accompanied that, I was candid in that response.
Okay. Aruba, October 2022. And I've got business record certificate for these, Judge. Might be a little faster. But did you take a trip with her to Aruba in 2022?
Yes, ma'am. So that Aruba trip was, so there was a package deal there. My mother had recently retired, and I decided to take my mother on a cruise.
Okay.
And the second leg after the cruise concluded, D.A. Willis and I went to Aruba. So that was all one trip, if you will.
Okay. So my question was, did you go with D.A. Willis to Aruba in 2022?
I did.
You paid for that trip using your business credit card, correct?
I did.
Okay. And you cruise as well, correct?
That's the cruise I was referencing with D.A. Willis, my mother, and myself.
Okay, and because there's two cruises, so let's just talk about the first one.
Okay.
So the first one was, that's the one with your mother.
Yes.
And so you introduced D.A. Willis to your mother. That trip you all cruised together, the three of you.
Yes.
After the cruise was done, you and D.A. Willis flew together, and your mom flew home.
Yes.
And you paid for all of this with your credit card, on your business credit card.
I did.
And are you saying that Ms. Willis paid you cash back for that?
She did.
And
now, but let me make this distinction though, because the number that you're looking at reflects the three people on the cruise ship. There were things that my mother, just the two of us, that D.A. Willis didn't do.
And I'm not attributing that. I did not. My math is not good, but I did not include anything with your mother on those. Can I show?
You wouldn't be able to see it because it's not separated out. It just shows a charge on the account when actually it would have been something with my mother.
Judge, may I approach with exhibits 10 and 11? They're both certified business records one's from Vacation Express, one's from H2.
I thought 10 was taxes.
I'm sorry, 11 and 12. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. And these are business records. Judge, they have the certification, so I move to admit them. And then...
All right. Defense 11 and 12. Ms. Cross?
Based on Ms. Merchant's representation that they are true and accurate as to the certification that was provided to her, we have no objection.
All right. Again, seeing no other objection, they're admitted.
So the trip, just the trip to Aruba alone, for you and D.A. Willis, $835.26, correct? Just Aruba.
I'm looking for the amount.
This one is 11.
Yes, ma'am. $3,835.26.
Okay. And then the Royal Caribbean for just you and Miss Willis was $1,269.70, correct?
No, ma'am.
Your mother's got a different line item on there. I'm talking about the cruise, the actual cruise cabin.
I think you need to rephrase that as in the form of a question, Ms. Merchant.
Did you pay Royal Caribbean for yours and Miss Willis's cabin $1,269.70?
Where are we? Which page?
We're on the receipts. There's just a few pages of receipts on exhibit number 11.
Okay. I'm in 11. Can you direct me to where you are in exhibit 11?
The receipt for Royal Caribbean. Got your flights on the one page. I already asked you about for Aruba. And just for the record, I blacked out their dates of them. And then Royal Caribbean may be on. Oh, it's small. It's hard to read. It's very hard to read. So let me ask it this way then. Do you recall paying around $1,269.70 for a Royal Caribbean cruise for you and Miss Willis? You don't remember that?
That amount seems kind of small. I don't. I think
Okay, so you believe it was higher.
Yeah.
Okay. While you were in Aruba, then you bought a cruise, a Norwegian cruise, right? And that was the New Year's Eve cruise?
While I was in Aruba, no ma'am.
The credit card documents that were admitted earlier show the purchase date when you were in Aruba, but you don't remember doing that in Aruba?
I didn't purchase a cruise while I was in Aruba. That may be when the cruise company decided to run the invoice, but I didn't purchase a cruise in Aruba, no ma'am.
Around the time you went to Aruba, you purchased a cruise for Norwegian for you and Miss Willis to take for New Year's, correct?
Before I went to Aruba, yes ma'am.
And that was roughly $3,387. The cruise to Aruba. I mean, the Norwegian cruise.
So that cruise was with my sisters.
Okay.
And the number that you are seeing would reflect my buying dinner for my sisters and their husbands.
I'm just talking about the cruise, the amount that was paid for the cruise ahead of time when you booked the cruise. I'm just talking about that.
Okay.
That was a little over $3,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and I understand you're saying you paid for other things, but I'm just talking about the cruise amount. Okay. And you paid for a Jeep and you paid for dinner while you were there in Bahamas.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the one that Miss Willis paid for a flight for, correct?
That's one of the flights she paid for. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, a documented paid for, not cash. I'm talking about a non-cash transaction. That's what she paid for.
You mean the one that I provided the receipt for?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That's that.
Okay. And so she booked that on her credit card and wasn't worried about, I know you said earlier that you were booking everything because she was worried about people knowing where she was traveling. She didn't have any fears booking that one though, correct?
I'm going to object to the phrasing of that question, speculate as to what was the motivation of the district attorney. If she wants to ask if that was the transaction, then he can respond that that was the transaction.
Ms. Merchant, I think you can rephrase the question, but I'll sustain it on the current phrasing.
So she purchased that under her own name, correct?
She did.
Okay. Let's see. So I know we talked a little bit about the seminar where you all met. Isn't it true that you would go to Miss Willis's house in South Fulton County occasionally?
I've never gone to her house in South Fulton County.
You've never gone to her house in South
I've
Fulton
never
County?
seen her house. The first time I even heard the address of that house was when one of the individuals in the election fraud case somehow doxed it and it got out. That was the first time I'd even seen that address.
But you would go to the East Point condo, correct?
What East Point condo?
East Point, Hateville, something like that.
I've never been to East Point with Miss Willis.
You've never gone to a condo in either the East Point or Hateville area with Miss Willis.
Wait, that's different. I have gone to a condo in Hateville.
Okay. So Hateville.
Yes, ma'am.
So So you have gone to a condo with Miss Willis in Hapeville.
I have.
Have you spent the night there?
Never.
Never spent the night.
Never.
Is that the condo that was rented by Robin Yurdy?
I believe it was.
And other members of the DA staff were there as well, correct? Sometimes.
I've never been around other members of the DA staff at a condo in Hapeville.
There's never been any security for Miss Willis?
Not around me.
Did you ever ride with Miss Willis with her security detail to and from the house?
No.
You served on Miss Willis's transition team, correct?
Yes.
And you were part of all of her interviews where she interviewed and re-interviewed employees?
I would say probably 98, 99% of them, yes.
Is it fair to say you took an active role in these interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to this, you'd never worked at a DA's office, right?
Have I ever worked in her DA's office?
At
No,
a
ma'am.
DA's office, any DA's office.
No, ma'am.
Have you ever managed a large law firm or a
Your
large?
Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance of these questions.
Ms. Murray?
He served on her transition team, and so, and what we're trying to prove is that there's a personal and financial relationship, and that it was improper. And so, you know, whether or not he had experience to serve on this transition team, I think is relevant.
Right. I think I already said it. We don't need the evidence
Okay.
on that point.
Terrence Bradley also received a contract for Fulton County, correct? Correct?
You're asking me about Terrence?
I asked if Terrence Bradley also received a contract for Fulton County.
I believe that he did.
And you were partners with him at that time, correct?
I was.
So under what you testified to earlier, you would get a third of that contract as well, correct?
I would have.
And Chris Campbell also had a contract with Fulton County.
I believe he did.
And so under what you've testified to, you would also get a third of that, correct?
I would.
They both had contracts for what are called first appearance, which is where they would appear on behalf of the district attorney to do first appearance hearings, correct?
I believe they did.
Okay. And they also had what's called a taint contract. They both entered into them January 25th, 2021, correct?
Filter, yes, ma'am.
Taint or filter.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was for work in the anti-corruption unit?
I don't know that it was anti-corruption. I think that it was civil rights, maybe.
Okay. And Judge, the DAs or Fulton County's come and I guess brought a certificate now, so we would move to admit the contracts. I've got those. Under that certificate, I was planning on doing it under the open records officer, but I believe now they've certified it. I just haven't looked at everything they've certified though, so.
I'm going to ask that the document be looked at and confirmed prior to its tender.
All right, Ms. Merchant, is there anything else? What other areas were you planning to cover on his direct other than these documents?
I'm planning on introducing all of the contracts and invoices, but I haven't had a chance to look at what Fulton County certified. So I'm planning on introducing those and then not much.
Can we do the not much? We'll do the not much, and then we'll get back to the contracts.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Okay, so this taint contract, and we're not admitting these right now, but if I represent to you that they say anti-corruption unit, can you tell us what a taint attorney for an anti-corruption unit would do?
I didn't have a part in those contracts.
They were your partners at the time, though, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and so you didn't have a part in those contracts, but you got a third of the contract payment.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so the taint contracts that Bradley and Campbell, who are your law partners at the time, had for doing taint review, you got a third of those.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You signed a confidentiality agreement with the DA's office as well, correct?
I did.
And I think I'm up to Judge 13. Marking that as number 13. Yeah, approach, Judge. Showing you a copy of what I marked as number 13. If you could take a look at that and tell me if that is the confidentiality agreement that you signed with the district attorney.
It is.
Okay. And this basically says you can't talk about anything that happens inside the DA's office, right?
No.
It doesn't say you can't talk about it?
No. You said it basically says that I can't talk about anything that happens inside the DA's office, and that's not what.
Are you tendering this exhibit?
I am, yes. We would tender 13.
Ms. Cross.
Fail to see the relevance or lodge a relevance objection, but otherwise.
Ms. Merchant, relevance of this?
Judge, it's relevant to his testimony. If he signed an agreement that says he can't talk about things that happen in the district attorney's office, I think that's relevant to this.
How?
Because it's motivation in his testimony. I mean, whether or not he's going to testify to something. It's also been certified. I mean, it's part of the record as from what Fulton County gave us.
Sure, but he hasn't said that it's preventing him from testifying in any way today, is it?
Well, and then I can ask him about that.
Yeah. Mr. Wade, is this confidential agreement affecting your testimony today?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Let's see. The contracts judge and the invoices that I wanted to admit all of his invoices and contracts with Fulton County. I have them certified. I guess I have them certified through Fulton County, so I wasn't sure if I needed to do that. I just wanted to know if the state had an objection to those before.
Well, they haven't had, I don't think they've had a chance to look at them. So that's the sole remaining exhibit in line of questioning here?
Yes.
And in terms of the follow-up questions, would it just be for him to say what's reflected in these documents themselves?
If they have an objection to the certificates that Fulton County has given, I would admit them through him because he could recognize them.
But assuming they're admitted, would there actually be anything substantive that he would add other than the documents themselves? No. All right. Okay. So subject to that qualification, do you have any other questions of this witness?
May I just have a moment?
Sure.
Thank you. Is it possible actually we take a quick break?
We're getting there.
Okay. Thank you.
And we certainly have the opportunity over lunch to take a look at these documents and work out whatever we could.
Did you discuss your relationship with Miss Willis in social settings?
Help me understand your question.
Did you discuss your relationship with Miss Willis in social settings?
No, I heard the question. I just need to understand what you're asking me. What relationship when...
Your personal relationship with Miss Willis, unqualified, I'm sorry. Did you discuss your personal relationship, your private, personal, romantic relationship with Miss Willis in social settings?
No, ma'am.
You've never discussed it in social settings?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever discuss it in front of Robin Yurdy in a non-social setting?
No, ma'am. Miss Willis is a very, as am I, we're private people. Not, our relationship wasn't a secret. It was just private. So, no, not at all. I wouldn't have discussed my relationship with Miss Yurdy or anyone else publicly.
Okay. I actually did have some questions just about the invoices. If you want to just...
These are the documents that you're referring to?
Yeah, they are. It's all of his invoices.
And what kind of questions would these be other than the invoices say what they say?
It just that, yes, that they say what they say.
All right.
Just talk about it. That's fine. No.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we'll take a break. I'll ask the parties to take a look at... What had you marked that as a defense exhibit?
I have his contracts and his invoices that I'm about to mark. So before he leaves me, I just want to make sure that the state doesn't have any objections.
So those are marked as?
They're about to be marked as
Exhibit 14?
14, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
All right, so 14 through 18. So I'll ask state take a look at those.
I will take a look at those and see if I can match them up with the certified documents that were presented.
All right, and then we'll address whether they are tendered for the record when we come back, and from there, then we would turn over to the remainder of defense counsel and then the state for any examination as well. So to that end, let's take 45 minutes. We'll be back at 1 o'clock. Mr. Wade, you're still under oath, and I'd ask you not to speak with any other witnesses about your testimony or about any testimony that's already occurred.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll be in recess.
Okay, as the court goes into recess, We will be back with a new video live at 1 o'clock when they come back into session. Thanks for watching. Join us back at 1.